My name is Amy Garner, and in this podcast, we're going to be talking to hypnotherapist and healer Cherry Emery. Cherry Emery. What can I say about Cherry? A good friend of mine recommended Cherry Emery at a time I was looking into clinical hypnotherapy. My 2 sessions with Cherry were intense and moving, yet what sticks with me the most was Cherry's caring, empathic persona. Love simply flows out of this woman. Cherry has devoted her life to energy healing in West Sussex in the south of the UK. In particular, she combines Reiki with angel healing and helps deceased spirits return to the light, though these specialisms are not widely advertised. I want to interject here that the night before my first session with Cherry, I had a kind of panic attack. I didn't understand why, because I hadn't been nervous of meeting her in the slightest. It later became apparent that I'd had what Cherry calls attachments, some people call them waywards, in my energy field. That is, beings who've left their physical body but have not reached the light. Apparently, it's quite common for them to feel fearful when they know intuitively that you're going to be seeing a healer who will actually clear them. Picking up attachments is one of the things you need to watch out for as a healer or empath, particularly as a sensitive, because they can really affect your mood and behaviours. Anyway, back to Cherry. Cherry comes from a long line of healers and psychics, though led a fairly conventional life as far as the world could see while child-rearing in the 1960s and 70s in suburban Britain. After her children left home, she was finally able to pursue her passion for healing. In the early days of her practice, she was given a helping hand in terms of attracting clients. A cable TV station she'd been interviewed for went bust, and her interview was just left playing on rotation for years and years on end, much to her amusement. She trained with the legendary Dolores Cannon, among others, yet it wasn't all sweetness and light. She was actually frowned upon by some because she spoke with the angels but didn't read the Bible or go to church. I could have happily talked to Cherry for longer, as she has so much wisdom to share about her work. If you visit her website, her offerings include past life regressions, healing, workshops, and house energy clearing. In reality, Cherry offers so much more. I do feel she has a riveting book within her, and I really hope it will get written one day. Until then, I am really happy to give you a slice of the delightful wisdom of healer Cherry Emery. Enjoy. Hello, Cherry Emery. Lovely to see you. Hello, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Excellent. It's so lovely to connect with you, and thank you so much for your time. I know we've had a bit of a, both of us have been around the houses trying to make this connection for various reasons, technological reasons, but it's lovely to see you. And just in terms of this podcast series, I'm very interested in talking to different healers and getting an understanding of how they work and why they work in the way that they do. And I was particularly drawn to your work a few years ago, and we had obviously a few sessions together which were very profound and moving, and I was very impacted by everything that came out of those sessions. And I thought maybe would it be okay for you just to say a little bit about how you work at the moment, and maybe what kind of issues you deal with clients?
Yes, I think I use a combination at the moment of 2 therapies, which is hands-on healing and regression hypnotherapy. Now, I have found that the majority of people who come to me often have attachments, and I am very wary of regressing somebody without checking their energy first, because I'm also aware that if they had a very aggressive attachment, I could actually regress that attachment and not them.
Yes.
Now, when you pick up attachments, you can take on their symptoms, their problems. So the first thing I'm looking to do is to make sure that they're completely clear of those. Now, secondly, when I do the regression, knowing that their actual body in this lifetime is completely energetically clear, although I work with the Dolores Cannon method, I am looking to go back to lifetimes which are causing them problems in this lifetime. So they may, for instance, and it could be anything, but people who are scared of rats often died of the plague. It could be that they've taken vows in a past life as a nun, and for some reason, if that lifetime hasn't gone back, they will take on uh, the persona of that past life and not understand why they have fears and phobias. So it's only when the lifetime hasn't gone back. If a lifetime, a past life, has gone back to the light, then while we have the experiences in the subconscious brain, they don't actually interfere with our lifetime. They enhance it because we've been there, done that, and come out the other side. It's when these lifetimes are earthbound and have not walked back within the light, then I'm looking to locate those, get the person to the emotion where they actually died, and then I can get the ghost of that past life in the room and get it to go back through me. The person on the bed who's being regressed can watch that happen, and it then takes the fears and phobias that they came in with away. Because they,
Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, because really they weren't theirs in the first place. They belonged to their soul or the past life that was stuck.
Excellent. I mean, I've that's really interesting concept about another lifetime kind of being a ghost or an imprint that needs to then go to the light. I've not actually heard it described in that way, but it does make sense with other things that I have read about past lives and their effect on people in this lifetimes and lifetimes going forward when issues are left unhealed.
Yes.
And I just go for the listener. Most listeners will have an understanding of what an attachment is, but I wondered, could you summarise that for people who maybe aren't sure?
Yes, an attachment is the spirit of somebody who has died and not gone back to the light. It's very simple. When you die, you are always met. And I take people back through death sequences daily as a regression therapist. And when you die, you simply walk into the light. It is that simple. And you don't change location, you change vibration. And then you're home. But if you choose not to walk into the light, then you remain earthbound. And there's no law that says you have to walk into the light. And depending on your beliefs and what you know and how you died, you may choose to walk this earth for hundreds of years. Under certain circumstances, well, you may find somebody to walk into. Now, there are people who are born as soul rescuers, and it's as though they carry a light with them that says, come this way and I can help you. And under normal circumstances, they can walk through that person and that person will not be affected. It's only really if that soul rescuer has a really bad day or something very badly emotionally upsets them that may lower their vibration, and then that past life gets stuck to them, and then they feel the symptoms of whoever that past life was.
I see.
So I maybe have, well, a lot of people here who are born soul rescuers who will phone me up saying, I've got one stuck, I feel depressed.
I
So
see.
the general symptoms of picking up are depression. You start liking or disliking things that are simply out of character. The easiest way to pick them up is number one, on drugs. That while you're out of your body, a drug addict who may have died but crave more drugs and not want to go back will look while you're out of your body, they'd like to just hop in, and they do frequently. The same with being drunk, and unfortunately the same with general anesthetic. Now, most people die in hospital, and for those that choose not to go back and decide, well, it's easier just to hop into somebody who's alive, while you're under general anesthetic, you do not have any defense against this. And I've seen sometimes in newspapers, oh, somebody went in to have their tonsils out and came out speaking with a foreign accent.
Wow.
And they think, they actually have a name for that. Well, really, they've just taken on an attachment that's probably stronger than they are and is changing their voice. And it's just a matter of taking them out and they'll be back to themselves again.
That's amazing. So people who have been in hospital, really there should be, as part of the service, someone there clearing the attachments.
Yes. If they had a healer who was an exorcist in the recovery room, who checked everybody just for 5 minutes and took anybody out, I think you would actually stop an awful lot of depression.
And you say depression is one of the main symptoms of having an
Depression
attachment?
is,
Okay.
it depends on the entity, of course. You can pick up lots of different things from entities depending on who they are. I once had somebody here who asked me, after I'd done a program before which was televised, and she phoned me, and she was a highly educated person who said, "Can you check me?" And as I put my hands on her, this very high up ranking Second World War Japanese Army officer bowed to me. And I bowed back to him and I said, "It's time to go. This isn't where you live. The war's over. Time to go home." And he bowed to me and thought about it and then vroom, whooshed through me. I'm like a walking vacuum cleaner for dead people, I think. But at the end of it, I said to this person, it was a high ranking Japanese officer, and she said, "Yes, that's what I expected. Everything in my home is Japanese, and yet I've never been there. I have no reason to have ever liked it and have never understood why I felt compelled to buy these things."
Wow.
So that is an example. Normally, they're not that dominant, but I guess if you've got somebody in that position in the first place, they were used to giving orders and used to controlling people.
Wow. And do you find ever that you need extra help clearing yourself of the attachments?
Yes, I have a friend in Hastings who does similar to me. So we would check on each other every 3 or 4 weeks. When you come to demonics, obviously they're not common, and I wouldn't want people to think that they're easy to pick up or it's an everyday occurrence. It isn't. But from time to time it does happen, and so we would do that together. And we wouldn't need to have the person there, we just need the name of the person, because when we work together, it's like putting two big batteries together. It doubles the power and makes it much easier for us. So we check each other out every 3 or 4 weeks, clear each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's good practice for energy workers, isn't it, to have healing themselves?
Well, I think anybody who wants to be an exorcist just needs to know somebody who can clear them. If they, you learn as you go. I didn't always work at the speed I work. It's taken years to build up. But you have to start somewhere. And if you know somebody who can check you out and clear you if you come unstuck, and, at the end of the day, I can come unstuck. Anybody can come unstuck. And
Absolutely. To me, it seems a bit like if you're working as a psychotherapist or a counsellor, they always have supervision. They go and see another experienced person doing the same kind of work.
Yes.
And, it's kind of offloading. And in this case, you're offloading energetically so that you don't pass on whatever has been around you to your next client, for example.
Well, that's why you always wash your hands between clients. It's not just entities, it's energy as well.
Yes.
And you need to keep yourself clear. It's very rare these days that I pick up anything. I used to. But as you grow, your energy grows. And so with a higher and higher vibration, most things that I clear just whiz straight through me. And it's just automatic these days. I could go to a National Trust house and it might be my day off and I've gone to look at antiques, but if there's something there, it happened at Hampton Court a few weeks ago. I just watched this film and the next thing I knew, vroom, it just went rushing through me. And my friend said to me, "It's supposed to be haunted in that room." I said, "It's not anymore."
Oh, wonderful.
But I just don't have any say in it anymore. I could be driving along, and if somebody had unfortunately died in a spot I was driving past, and sometimes people who die dramatically are actually frozen on the spot and need help to move on. So I can just drive past and go, oh, okay, they're all right now.
Wow. When I was reading your biography about your childhood, which sounds idyllic, by the way, in East and West Sussex, is that correct? In southern England, and about your mum and your grandmother, and they have, always being able to see spirits and very sort of in tune with that kind of spiritual world. I guess, it sounds like from what I know of you, you were drawn to that work very early on. Were you had you always seen spirits yourself?
Yes, I could always see ghosts. And I had premonitions of a child. It was almost as though I had this tiny television just out to the left of me and I could watch things happen in advance. Um, I don't get that now. It's as though you go through phases and you learn something and then you move on to something else. My mother was very psychic, often knew things would happen in advance. My grandmother, very much so. But my father was also psychic. So both grandmothers were very tuned in. And I think things like this are hereditary. You often find psychic families and it's passed on through the genes. So I think when we incarnate, we obviously choose, if we want to do this work, we choose a family to be born into that actually carries that in a physical manner as well as an energetic one.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I'm wondering whether, a person may be drawn to this kind of work whose family on the surface doesn't seem to be very open to it at all. But it may
Yes.
be further back in their sort of ancestral line.
What I've discovered on that field is that often very old souls will choose to be born into dysfunctional families. It's a way of showing an example and raising the vibration within that family unit. They often feel very odd, very unconnected, and not sure why they're there. But if I take them back and regress them as to why they chose that, they will see that they are actually an old soul with lots of knowledge who can help the family they've been born into.
Wow, that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Do you find that your clients come with a certain type of issues, or do they approach you and they kind of have an awareness? I think there's something attached to me, or do they literally not know why they're coming to see you, and you're the one who kind of goes, well, actually.
Well, it depends on their understanding. I wouldn't want to frighten anybody. Often people just say, I've got a block and I don't know how to shift it. Now, that block might be that they've picked up and got attachments. That block may be past life. So that's why I cater for everything. I also, according to the Dolores Cannon method, if you've read any of her books, you'll see that at the end of it, I will call through the soul of that person. The subconscious mind is 90% of the brain and the conscious mind is only 10%. So you only need to be in light trance. You do not, we're not Paul McKenna. Light trance is plenty. I can call through the soul and then I can ask questions that they have listed. And these questions, the answers should automatically come straight back from them. So, am I in the right job? Who's my guardian angel? And as I ask the question, they should automatically get the answer. And then I write down everything that's said, and they take this away with them. Some people are brilliant at it. I had one person once who said, am I actually living in the right town? And their soul said, no, you need to move to Edinburgh. You will find a house on such and such a street. If you look at the number so-and-so, you'll be in there on this certain month. I mean, the precision was brilliant. Not
Wow.
everybody is that clear. And when we do the regressions, some people see, some people hear, some people just know, as in clairsentience, but everybody's different. So I just go with what comes, but they all feel. So people say, it didn't seem real. And I said, but you were crying at the time. You can't make up the feelings that go with a regression, no matter how it feels. I've done lots myself, and some are extraordinarily clear. But I go to, or they go to anywhere. It could be a different planet, a different dimension. They may be a completely different being to beings we are on Earth. They may go onto a planet that's all water, a planet that knows no negativity. I've had people cry in past lives when they're on other planets and say, I've got to go to Earth next. I don't want to go there. It's dark. It's miserable. They have wars. They all argue. It's a horrible dark place. Why have I got to go there? I just like being in somewhere that's pure love and happiness. And oh, I don't want to go to the earth. And then I say, where are you next? Oh, I'm in a womb. I'm going to be one of those humans.
Oh dear. And from all the work that you've done over these many years, in relation to that, do you have a theory about why people keep being reincarnated?
Well, yes, I think if you look at it, no matter what you think the beginning is, whether you're scientific and see it as a big bang, or whether you're very religious and see it as purely God, um, we all come from one big energy, and ETs say exactly the same when I channel them. And if you think that that energy needs experience but is too vast, so it plucks cells from its whole and puts them outside itself. These cells become souls, and the soul has an agenda, and that's to acquire experience um, through whether it chooses 50 lives or 5,000 lives. I look at a soul as a jigsaw puzzle done backwards, all up together but no picture. And then as every life is lived, I see that piece of picture come on the puzzle. So when you're an old soul and you've got 90% of that puzzle behind you and all that experience, of course you know the answers because you've been there and done it. But some souls may choose every incarnation on the earth, and others may experience 10 on the earth, and their home planet could be somewhere light years away, a different galaxy, a different dimension. And so we sit and look at humans and judge them, and you can't, because it might be their first life on earth. They may have come from somewhere so much higher than the earth and come here, and the thought of actually having children and bearing them is so alien to them. You just can't judge because we're all different. We come to the earth, and the body we wear is just the clothes on our spirit. And here, the guides say, you feel, you know, you can eat, you can drink, you can have sex, and you can't do that on the majority of planets because they say beings on the majority of planets are purely etheric.
So there's no physical body?
No.
Okay.
Although, of course, there are physical bodies on other planets, Sirius being one of them. I have taken many people back to Sirius, and they all talk about having the same type of body. And when you do that many times, they can't all be wrong when none of them have met each other, and they had no idea they'd ever been there.
Everything that you're saying is so interesting. I mean, I wish I could speak to you for another 3 hours or something like that. It's wonderful. But I just wanted to go back to, because you mentioned working with the late Dolores Cannon.
Oh, yes.
And I wondered, what was that like?
Dolores was brilliant. She was a very definite lady. She had very set ideas, but she didn't believe in negativity. And a lot of people at lectures have said, well, it's there. And she said, no, it's not. Now, when she died, I was telling my daughter-in-law that unfortunately she died, and I was giving her healing at the time because she's also a soul rescuer. And I said, unfortunately, Dolores has died. Well, with that, Dolores walked straight into the room, jumped into me, and she said, well, now, since I've been dead, I've been looking at what everybody's done, what I taught them. And I never ever dreamt anybody do what you're doing.
And how did that feel? Was that a pat on the back?
Well, she said, I suppose I have to congratulate you.
Well done.
And I thought, well, that
Bridging, congratulations.
So, yes. And with that, she just faded, and Archangel Gabriel came in and said, oh, ladies, I'm showing Dolores around, and I'm taking her to everybody she taught, because when you've spent a lifetime like she has teaching people and getting so much information out there, it's so interesting for them to see how people are using it. And he said, I'd just like to thank you both for the soul rescues you do. And he was gone as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. I was watching, I think, something on YouTube that Dolores did before she passed, and she talks about the 3 waves of volunteers. Is that a theory that you resonate with, or you've observed in the course of your work?
It's not really something that I have read it a long time ago, but no, I suppose I concentrate on just working with the attachments. Um, I channel all the archangels, but I don't advertise as doing that, because if they choose to come through and give a message about who somebody is or where they come from, then I think that's between the archangel and the client on the bed. And when you channel, you don't always remember what you channeled afterwards, because you're just conduit in the middle.
Sure, sure.
So I don't work as a clairvoyant or a fortune teller, but I do channel the messages. And also, I started seeing angels about, maybe 18 years ago. And I hadn't seen them at all as a child. I just saw ghosts. So once I got used to seeing them out, they then started sort of standing the other side of the bed while I was giving healing. And I said, I can see you. And if you want to work with me, that would be great. With that, the first one jumped in, and it's like a little electric charge going into the client. And it was so exciting. Now it's sort of become the norm, you know. Everything's exciting when it's new, but then when you get used to it. So I'm well aware that maybe a lot of people who come to me are actually incarnate angels, and really often their date of birth will give away which one they're with or part of their energy or work for. So I'll call in that archangel, and often they'll work through me to energize or clear the person who's come in.
Wow. By the date of birth, is that a numerological thing, or is that angel numbers, or?
No, just the date of birth. That often, if you add up the last two numbers, so, you know, if they're born in 66, 6 and 6 is 12, which gives them a 3. And then maybe they're born on the 1st of February, which is another 3. So I would see that as a 33.
Okay.
And then 33 is Archangel Michael's number. So I'd say, okay, Archangel Michael, I think I got one of your people here. Would you like to come in, give them healing, clear them? And if you've got a message for them, I'm sure they'd love to hear it.
Wow, that's fascinating. Excellent. And you mentioned then that you keep, you know, you don't advertise as a fortune teller or a clairvoyant. Do you also keep the angel work quiet as well? And that just, you know, if they appear, I'm just trying to remember when I last saw your website, whether you say that you work with angels on there.
Yes, I did. I did used to run workshops, teaching people how to connect with angels and the different energies all the archangels carried. But I've been so busy sort of lately with the regressions, and obviously my husband's retired now, so whereas I used to fill the house up because he was out at work all day, things change as time goes on. But yes, definitely angels are my biggest thing and my biggest contacts. And while I'm happy to channel masters and sometimes Old Testament prophets, but really 80% of my work is working with archangels.
Wonderful. And I think we were talking just before we hit record on this podcast how one of the things I really liked about your work, and one of the reasons I was drawn to you, was because you have a very sort of this clinical grounding in the hypnosis. You know, it's a very, it's less esoteric, shall we say, clinical hypnotherapy. It's you know, it's more accepted maybe therapeutically in kind of traditional circles.
Yes.
And then you've got this other layer, which is all the esoteric stuff, just nicely nestling on the top for those who want it, kind of thing. So when they come to see you, they're kind of opening up into this world in a quite a gentle way.
Yes, every single person is different. And I think a lot of people call me because they're interested in Dolores Cannon's regressions. Whereas she didn't clear people of entities before she started. And really, the main work she did was to take people back for proof of many lives and just how much information you can get from regressing somebody. Whereas I think while that happens automatically, I'm also looking to clear them of stuck past lives. And I used to be able to do that clairvoyantly, just giving somebody healing on the bed. But then my guide said that many lives, because this is a planet of emotions, many lives are actually stuck with that emotion. So if I can regress the person on the bed to feel that emotion, that then releases that past life that is stuck and earthbound. Maybe they were terrified when they died and actually are sort of in a frozen state, but just regressing that person releases it, and then releases the fears from the person who's in the present incarnation.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I remember when I came to see you, I think for the first time, and I stayed nearby with a relative, and I wasn't quite sure why I was coming. I was just really drawn to see this lady that a friend had recommended. And the night before, I had a bit of a panic attack, not because I'm nervous in any way about you or what you were going to do or anything. It was just as though I just couldn't explain it. I couldn't sleep. I was really overcome with nerves. And then when I got to you, it all made sense, and you explained that it was likely to be the fact that I did have attachments and they were nervous. And that was,
Exactly.
yeah, that
That
was
is
my,
often the case. Somebody will phone me up and then they will say, I felt really frightened, or I didn't sleep the night before. And that's because when you've got attachments, they know they're going to be removed. And because if they weren't frightened or worried or were normal in the first place, they wouldn't actually be attached to that person. They would have just gone back to the light normally. So to them, it's an unknown quantity. What am I actually going to do with them? They know they're going to be taken out, but are they going to be lost or frightened again? But
yeah.
I'm just an open doorway to return them to where they should be. So that helps them and then helps the person they're attached to.
Yeah, I think a few weeks prior to seeing you, I was feeling really antisocial. I just didn't want to go out, I didn't want to see anyone, I didn't want to make any plans. And it felt as though, on reflection, that whatever was attached to me kind of wanted me for itself.
That's often the case. People who pick up, I have seen children, I have seen adults, and they suddenly want to hide in their bedroom, pull the curtains, have nothing to do with anybody else. It's very common and it's very unfortunate, but that attachment is really taking them over, and it doesn't want them to socialize or for somebody to see what's happened to them. So anybody who feels like that should seriously consider getting cleared, because the
Yes.
chances are that depression is not theirs. It just belongs to whatever or whoever they've picked up, and it is within their body or their aura. A lot of attachments are just within the aura. And yeah, once they've been removed, you just feel yourself again.
Wonderful, wonderful. Um, you also mentioned earlier when we were talking, sorry if I'm swerving the interview around again, but I just wanted to squeeze this question in because I thought it was quite interesting to me. You used the word exorcism, and I know
Yes,
you've also used the word soul rescuer. And
yes.
I wondered, without getting too hung up on it, but just out of interest, do you use the word soul rescuer when you're advertising your services, or again, is that something that you keep
I
quiet and
haven't.
it
I
just comes
haven't
out?
done.
Okay.
I
Oh, wow. Wow.
my website was very kindly set up by my nephew about, I
Oh,
don't know, 10 years ago. Hasn't been updated. Um, no, I don't think I've used the word soul rescuer. And I also think since that time, it's evolved more and more and more to be soul rescue. I didn't start that way. I started, well, yes, I suppose I was doing the soul rescues, but not at the level I'm doing them now. Um, I think as you do more courses, as you grow, from what you learn from other people and also from being upgraded yourself, you change and adjust the treatment you give. I'm a combination of everything I've learned. I don't, as you learn more, so you incorporate it. And of course, your vibration grows. So it makes it easier to work. I'm just on automatic pilot now. I can't actually switch off the soul rescue. If I
wow.
go if I go somewhere that's haunted, I just walk into the room and it's boom, 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 and you know the eyes go up for my husband. Here we go again, and I just grin and carry on.
Excellent. You see, you can do it quite matter of factly now. It doesn't need to be that you need to prepare or
No,
sit down
I
or
don't
anything.
even have to think about it. I could be watching. Interestingly enough, I was watching a First World War commemoration, the Queen or, you know, the royal family were there. And I only stood and watched it. And with that, it was vroom, vroom, vroom. And I thought, okay, so you were still there and they needed help. But it was just, I think the First World War was so traumatic. And there was a big house, a National Health Trust down in Devon. And we were staying, I can't remember, at a hotel somewhere, and I saw a flyer for this house and the son in this First World War army uniform. And I just could feel this poor person was so desperate. And I said to my husband, we have to stop at that house on the way home. I walked around every room and didn't find him. And then I got back home, and 2 weeks later, I was talking to a friend, and I said, this poor man, I said he was a sole heir, and he had a terrific heart problem, but he had to go to war to be an example for those that work for him. I said, and he died, and he felt that he'd let his parents down because he was the last person to inherit that property. I said, he couldn't win. If he hadn't have gone, he'd have been seen as a coward. He did go, and yet his heart, you know, he was an ill man, although he was only in his 20s. And I looked at his picture and I said, I know you're lost, and I know you're frightened, and I know you think you couldn't win no matter what you do. And with that, he stood in front of me, looked at me and smiled and just walked through me. And that was sort of a couple of 100 miles from where he'd lived, or, you know, he died in France. And
Wow.
Distance makes no difference. It is the emotion. It's
Yes.
Suddenly, I said, I understand how you feel and how honourable you are to have wanted to please everybody. And it was because I think I understood his emotion that I could actually get him in.
So it sounds like you're because of your empathy, you're building the trust between yourself and these disincarnate spirits, and then
Yes.
they can come towards you feeling safe.
Yes, that is how it is, really.
Yes.
Especially people who feel guilty that they should have survived to keep the estate going because all the forefathers have put so much into it over hundreds of years, and suddenly there you are, sole heir, and you die and there is nobody else, and you're feeling you've let down all your forefathers. But on the other hand, if you didn't go to war, you'd be seen as a coward by everybody who worked for you. And that's how it was in 1914, you know.
Yes, and I guess from what you're saying then, that spirits like the one that you've just described about, if they have this feeling of guilt, or they're unworthy, or they're bad in some way, would that stop them going to the light?
Yes, it would. I think for years we've all been brought up to think you'll be judged. And from all the regressions I've done, there is no judgment, only your own. So all of those who have learnt, maybe through other organisations, that they will be judged when they die, and if they don't come up worthy, they'll be sent to hell, then they realise actually that all the time they're earthbound, they're not dead. They are just themselves without a body. So why should they go back and risk being sent to hell when actually they're as alive as they ever were in a body? It's just that they haven't got the body to carry around. So they're frightened to go back. And we need to get rid of this judgment thing. You know, every lifetime, and again, I had somebody a few weeks ago who said, everything's gone wrong in my lifetime. Why me? Why does everything happen to me? Well, I took him back to a previous life that, believe you me, was 10 times more dramatic than the one he was in. And having got him back in that lifetime, he then saw himself planning this lifetime and what he would take on in this lifetime to experience. And he said, I'm sitting there saying, oh, give me a dose of that. Oh, I'll try that. Throw the whole lot at me. And he said, oh, I never realised I've asked for everything I've had. He said, oh, no, I'll never complain again. He said, I've got all these experiences to go through, and now I must see it differently, that actually I asked for them.
Wow. Wow, you know, that's quite profound though, isn't it? If being hit with that, does
yes.
the person have any sort of agency then in changing? or does the person have to accept whatever comes his way?
I think they accept what comes their way,
Right.
because at the
Wow.
end of the day, it's what they, as their soul, has chosen for this incarnation. You've got help. Most people don't understand that no matter what they go through, they're never on their own. They have guides, they have their guardian angel. They're never, ever alone. There's all this organization upstairs, and each lifetime, I say, it's like a teenager planning to go to Alton Towers. You get all excited before you go, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then when you get there, the reality hits you actually. Some rides are brilliant, others frighten the life out of you, and others, you throw
But
up on.
yeah.
And that is life. We hit reality when we come into a body. We forget what we planned. We forget where we come from. And when I've regressed people, I've had some really dramatic people who say, I broke that law. I deserve to be in the dark. I don't deserve to go back. And I said, get real. You planned that life. You've served your time. They're all waiting for you back in the light. Stop being so dramatic. You took part in a play. And if you're in the audience in a play, do you actually come out at the end of it saying, oh, that murderer deserves to be hung? You don't. You see it as a play. And that's what life is. You've planned this life, and you come here and you experience it on every level, and then you go back. Well, at least you should do. And I'm just kind of here to nudge those that haven't gone back.
Well, it's extraordinary how, a kind of simple, on some levels, change in perspective can just change everything in terms of how
Yes.
you view your life, how you're able to cope with your situation, putting things into context, moving on, seeing the wisdom that you've gained out of certain situations, and kind of reaching a point of peace rather than struggling and feeling, victimized or out of control. And it takes, I guess, someone coming to see someone like you who has these abilities to connect with that higher wisdom and pass it on in a way people can understand, that really, generates that healing that people are looking for.
Well, I think I was very lucky as a child, because I could always go back to a past life every single night and go through the death sequence. And I've realised since then that actually, if somebody saw me doing that, they would see me as a ghost in this house I used to live at, going and sitting in that chair and dying. So ghosts aren't always a stuck past life. They could be somebody from this lifetime actually going back and then seeing it as a way to go back to the light.
So they're tidying up their old stuff.
Yeah, well, so as a child, every single night I would just go back to this past life and die. And then I waved to everybody, hi, I'm home. And I just thought I was my parents' child in the daytime, and you only went to bed to go back to the light. I couldn't, I didn't know everybody didn't do it or couldn't do it. And I was born with the ability to astral project, and I could do it in the daytime. I could float through walls, but normally I just saved it for nighttime to go home on.
So you've always had one foot in the everyday material world and another foot very firmly planted in the metaphysical, what's
Absolutely.
unseen to most people's eyes.
And if you're born that way, you don't know anything else. It's
Absolutely.
your
And it
it's
sounds
your
like,
normal.
yeah, and it sounds like your mum and your grandmother and your on your father's side too, they all really helped nurture that sense of,
Absolutely.
validation, and that this is okay, and it's not something to be looked down upon or shut off or repressed, or, there's no shame.
Well,
Um,
I didn't know anything else, because it wasn't a topic that was so exciting that, oh, did you know? It was no different to pass the jam, please, at tea time. I've heard my two grandmothers, when they're at tea, came to the house on the same day, would compare ghosts they'd seen when my father was gamekeeper at Parham Park in West Sussex. They'd both seen this knight on a horse jump over the wall in exactly the same place. Um, and often they'd seen the same ghosts in the same place, which was quite fascinating, because there was a pub in Settlescombe, which is a small village in East Sussex, where they'd both seen the ghost of a stagecoach and the horses. going up the same piece of road. So I just presume that if they could do it, and my parents both grew up in haunted houses and they could both see that that was just something everybody could do. It didn't. I was so naive that I didn't know you couldn't. You know, I came home, I think when I was 17 and working in the bank, and said, oh, somebody freaked out. They saw a ghost in the vaults. And my parents looked at each other and giggled and said, we thought you'd work it out sometime that not everybody could see. You know,
And did you find at school that you were able to be vocal about this, or was this something you kind of knew you had to kind of keep it a bit more to yourself?
I don't think I ever vocalized about it at
Oh,
school because
okay.
um, if nobody talked about it, then I suppose it just didn't come up.
Yes. And in terms of over the years, have you noticed any changes in attitude generally that
Oh,
people are a bit more?
absolutely.
Oh,
What?
really?
Yes, what used to be, oh, you can't talk about that. Now open any newspaper or magazine, and there'll be something in there. People have really opened up. It's not such a taboo subject as it used to be. People are open-minded. I think the energies upon the earth have become much higher. And often people carry some of this knowledge, but the energy on the earth has to be right for the time for them actually to realize and wake up to themselves. So maybe I was just sort of born before my time. I don't know.
Well, I suppose, I think you come from a long line of, female healers, and their
Yes.
status in societies are sometimes revered, and other times, they've been persecuted, and it's quite a complex history, really, isn't it?
Well, I also know that in my past lives, I was once burnt at the stake. But another amusing one was all of my life, I always knew that I'd been a doctor. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago I went back to that lifetime, which I think was in the 1600s, where I trained in London and worked just outside of Paris. And I used to have this recurring dream as a child where I would see these people in a mental asylum chained to their beds. And I'd say, oh, don't make me go back here again. And I didn't know whether I was one of the inmates, whether I owned the property, or whether I was the doctor. So when I was regressed, I found out I was actually the doctor, but not just for general, but for, of course, mentally and ill people as well. And the practice in those days was to drill a hole in the top of their head to let the devil out.
Oh, is that like trepanation? I heard
Well,
this. I don't know that that's maybe more of a South American thing, but
where they put the crystals in.
yeah, I don't know. They used to
Yes,
drill a hole in the skull or something. Is that the same kind of
yes.
thing?
And I remember thinking when I found out I'd done that, and that in fact, those poor people that I'd inadvertently killed through the infection of doing it were all sort of sitting there waiting for me to go and take them back again. So I thought, well, the lifetimes change and it might be sort of 2000 and whatever now, but obviously I spent even in that lifetime 400 years ago, I still let in the devil out. So it would seem,
There's
it would
there's
seem
a theme.
there's a theme running through my lives, yes, which
and
is always,
and and I guess all the kind of the wisdom and experience, even though medicine has changed a huge amount in the last few hundred years, of course, but you would have still been learning about how to care for people, empathy, the different challenges of mental health and things like that, and that would have all, I'm assuming, been brought with you from those lifetimes to be used in the present day.
yes, yes. Well, let's be honest, the body hasn't changed much, has it? So while techniques move on and the pharmaceutical companies discover more and more, the body's still the same, and we still pick up as we did then. And that's a basic that needs to be, I think, known. I know a few years ago there was a big debate in London about um, whether or not possession should be seen as a diagnosis. And I think it did come out that it should be seen, because many people I see have been diagnosed as mentally ill, maybe bipolar or schizophrenia, and actually all they've got is some very dominant attachments. But I have equally given healing to people who have been mentally ill and don't have attachments. So, you pays your money and takes your chance. Some people I can help, others healing will always help, but it won't cure them.
Do you ever see a day when the kind of work that you do would be more integrated in a kind of, I don't know whether it would be the National Health Service or more of an
Yes.
integrative doctor's practice?
Very interestingly, St George's Hospital in London, I see there was, although I haven't read every word of it, there was a letter through from the lady who runs the head of the Leukemia Association in this country, saying that there was an organisation going to pay for healers to go in there, and that they would have sort of access to patient notes and the, not just for the patients, but for the staff as well. And I know that that needs to happen because often doctors and nurses pick up badly. I have doctors and nurses come to me, and if you're dealing with people who have attachments all day, there are times when you're going to pick them up as well.
Wow.
So, if we could keep people clear of picking up, this planet would be a different place. We'd all be free to be ourselves and grow without, things dragging us down,
So,
people
so,
holding us back.
so the previous lifetime's trauma as baggage that shows up in
Exactly.
the unconscious in this lifetime, and that's
Yes,
what's holding a lot of people back today, even if they may not know that's what it is. They might just, as you
exactly.
say earlier,
Yeah.
experience it as some kind of a block or a recurring
Yes,
pattern that they can't seem to shake.
that's right. So when they come to me, I just have to ask myself, is it somebody they've picked up who is actually not related to them, or is it a past life that, because they both show the same symptoms, it, as you say, is baggage.
Right. Wow.
It's not
Fascinating.
theirs.
Yes, absolutely fascinating. I was going to ask actually, because today has been so fascinating and interesting. Do you have any plans to teach or even write a book about your experiences and knowledge?
Well, I did used to teach. I do teach people healing. Um, and Sukim, once I started seeing angels, I changed. I was a normal UC Reiki master. Um, and I changed to working with Sukim because it's updated Reiki. It also works with angels and etheric crystals. And having done a 2-year crystal healing course, I I think the biggest thing I learned was that actually etheric crystals, to me, are more powerful than the real thing, because you can incorporate those within the body and have them working for weeks. Whereas if you just deal with a solid crystal, you're balancing it on the body while you're doing the healing, but then it falls off or it's gone when they walk out the door.
Wow.
So
And by etheric crystal, it's probably a huge subject, so I don't want to, ask you to describe it in, all its depth, but in brief, what is an etheric crystal?
in brief, an etheric crystal is a crystal from the ethers, which is purely made up of energy but carries the same energy as the solid crystal would. So if you ask for an etheric amethyst, now amethyst traditionally is used for things like protection. So if you had somebody who desperately needed protecting, I could put out my hand and ask the angels to give me an etheric amethyst and put that within that person's aura and ask that crystal to actually work as protection for them. So they're much
Excellent.
cleverer than the solid one.
Excellent, excellent. That makes a lot of sense. Excellent.
When I trained in Sukim, you ask an angel to give you an etheric crystal to actually work around the aura. Well, this angel stood there as clearly as I can see you there, and actually handed me an etheric apotholite. And I'm my mouth dropped open a bit, I think, because it was just mind blowing. But having seen it, I now know if you ask, you get. And everything in esoterics is so simple. You don't need a book full of massive words, and it is simple. And it's our birthright to understand and to be able to tune in and to see. It's just practice. And while some people will always find it easier than others, start with meditating, start with bringing some peace into your own life and slowing down and, join a circle. Because if you do and you practice, then it's not just your energy. The whole energies gel together and make it really easy for people to get images or feelings or to see things, Whereas when you're just by yourself, it's not so easy.
And you don't get the feedback. It's good to keep a journal, and if you're doing practicing readings and things like that and writing it out and then referring back at a later date, but practicing with a live person who can give you immediate feedback, and maybe a more experienced teacher as well, helps move things along a little bit faster.
Yes.
And the key is just really finding a group which is safe, and by that I mean energetically clear and clean, and that the person who's running the group is coming from a good place.
Exactly. Yes, I think you've got to be careful. Yes, there's all charlatans out there.
So you use your intuition to find the group to help develop your intuition further.
Yes. And I always say to people sort of in this part of the country, well, the College of Psychic Studies in London, people who actually get to teach there are usually well vetted, with plenty of references, and maybe even if you can't get there, maybe they can recommend somebody in your area who you could trust. The Spiritualist Church, obviously, they run their own circles, although as I channel the archangels, I don't think they do that. Their whole idea is to actually bring proof of life after death, and that you can't die, and that your relations can be contacted, brought through, and give messages. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what a lot of people want, But interestingly, if you get the messages from the archangels, they tend to know a bit more.
Excellent. Going a bit higher up the proverbial ladder, so to speak.
I always think aim for the top, and if you drop down a bit, that's fine. But
absolutely. Rounding off today, again, just to thank you for your time. It's been absolutely lovely speaking to you, and you've got so much wisdom and knowledge to share about what you do. I guess just to ask, if people want to find you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
By email, just put Cherry Emery, into Google, and my website will come up, and send me an email.
That's wonderful. And just to finish on the topic that we've been speaking about today, if people do feel that they have an attachment and they're maybe not able to get to see you immediately in person, do you have any advice for some self-care tips that they could do for themselves?
Yes, I would. Basically, we're talking about the lost, the lonely, the frightened, or then maybe not so nice, who attach themselves to you. Now, the main archangel of protection, and as a psychopomp, which means one who carries the living or the dead back to the light, is Archangel Michael. And my advice is always to people who think that they've got attachments, or if I clear them and they pick up more, I say, call his name 3 times, ask him to come and hold your hand, and then talk to the entity within you or is attached to you, and say, okay, you were drawn to me because of my light. Now look at the light holding my right hand, and hold his hand, and he will take you back to be with those that love you. And always reassure them that they'll be safe and that there is no judgment, because they won't have moved on for whatever their own fears are. And they need to be reassured that there are people they love who are waiting for them, that they're not about to be sent to hell, no matter what they've done. Even if they've committed murder, it could be an experience that their soul chose to experience in that lifetime. And therefore, the judgment, it's not going to happen. You review your own lifetime, and if you wish to pay, or you think you owe somebody, you can actually repay them with kindness in the next lifetime, when you both are in the same incarnation together. So you set your own judgment, you make your own payments to help somebody if you feel that you've wronged them. So that will be sorted out between you and your guides when you get back, but you don't have to worry about it. So the whole aim is to get these attachments back into the light, where, don't forget, they're a real person as well. They need help. It's not just the person who's there in a physical body, but all these attachments have been in bodies. They are real people who need help to get back. And, Archangel Michael, to me, is the strongest. And if you ask, he'll come.
Cherry Emery, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.